You're listening to the Be Better Off Show by Kelly+Partners.
Good morning and welcome to the Be Better Off Show, where we find great Australians who are interesting and inspiring to share with us how to be healthier, wealthier and wiser. And today I'm extremely excited to have Katarina Kroslakova, otherwise known as KK, the editor-in-chief of this new and amazing New York Times style magazine, T Australia. Welcome, KK.
Good morning, BK. How are you?
I'm great. How are you going?
Look, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to impart any advice on how to be healthy or wealthy or wise, but I'm very happy to be on the show. Thank you for having me.
Very, very keen. And you know, what's so interesting is that you can learn something from everyone. Yep. And so much of the wisdom that I've discovered over time has come from all sorts of places. Now, I met KK through a good friend of mine. I was sitting next to her at a dinner. And that was a great and inspiring evening, which was terrific. And so I thought, look, why don't we get KK to tell us where did you grow up? What was your you've got brothers and sisters, family, education, and what sort of got you started in your career?
I was born in a little tiny country called Czechoslovakia when it was still the one country, when we were still together. I was from the Slovak part, from quite a mountainous area near the Polish border. So my childhood was distinctly spent in ski fields, on ice rinks, building snowmen, being outdoorsy, climbing, being a bit of a tomboy, being very active, and also learning a lot of languages. And we had to speak compulsory Russian because we were still behind the Iron Curtain. And we also learned German on the side. I've started to learn other languages as well. So it was a very cultured upbringing, I guess. My mum's a piano teacher and I learned piano from a very young age. My dad was in fashion in terms of the chemical engineering side of fashion. And I've got one brother who's ended up being an orthopedic surgeon. So the disappointment of the family, obviously. And we decided to come to Australia when I was 8 years old. My dad was very adventurous and decided to just, take a 3-year contract, see what it's like at the other side of the world. And he was offered jobs in Australia, in South Africa, I think Joburg, and I'm going to say Saudi Arabia or Syria, one of those. And Mum just looked at him and went, just Australia would be fine, thanks. You couldn't possibly have picked a more remote place on the planet for us. It was just there was the land of kangaroos and koalas and exotic things. It was just so far, far away. So we came here and my destiny was originally to be a concert pianist. I was a bit of an ADHD kid back then or still am probably. And it was very hard to get me to sit down for any length of time. And piano seemed to be the only thing that kind of got me to sit down, 10 minutes, concentrate, and I suppose give my poor parents a bit of a break. And I loved it. I was quite good at it. I had perfect pitch. I seemed to have a little bit of talent. So we pursued that, and that was my destiny. And then my destiny took me to London. I got a scholarship at the Royal Academy in London to study piano there. And while I was there, I met some people who worked at the BBC. And fortunately, I had both my European passport and my Australian passport. So I was able to work over there. And that's why I started. My first job in journalism was at the BBC. And they were extraordinarily kind to me and they looked after me and they taught me everything from the ground up. It was literally the minute I walked into those doors at the BBC in London, I just fell in love, got the bug, never left. So I learned everything about microphone technique, production, scripting, editing, live broadcast, like everything from the ground up was very generously provided by the BBC. So it was an extraordinary training ground. I came back to Australia, did a master's degree here just to kind of formalise those qualifications and off I went. Brand new career at the age of 19 was waiting for me and I was very lucky. I was very lucky to have two loves. I have to say my music love and also my journalism love. So quite honestly, wouldn't want to do anything else.
So you go to London. How old were you when you went to study music in London?
In London, 17. Yeah.
And then did you do a degree or finish a few years or?
I did, yeah. So I was actually doing an honours. I had a scholarship at Sydney Uni as well for my music degree. So I did 4 years honours degree in Sydney, but at the same time, before COVID, I was travelling on a plane quite a lot. And so I actually did 2 degrees. I did one in London as well, a degree in performance, and honours 4-year degree at the University of Sydney, because like I said, I had an alumni scholarship, so you wouldn't want to sacrifice that. You want to do the right thing and you want to finish your degree. So
then you do BBC. How long did you work there, and what did they get you to do? Where did you travel, and did they send you around using your language skills, or?
On and off, it was 3 years. No, I actually worked in Radio 3, which was the automatic, really natural, organic sort of transition for me. So Radio 3 is the music and sort of literature and arts channel. So I was not a war correspondent. I'm not made out for that at all. I'm happy to have it that way. I just did arts. So I shouldn't say I just did arts, but I did music. So I did live broadcasts. I did interviews. I did literature. I did radio plays. I did a lot of editing, a lot of interviewing. And I worked mostly in London, but I also went up to Manchester and Birmingham just to try out the other bureaus as well.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. So, KK, what you've sort of mentioned. So, as an outsider, the BBC has been around a long time. Significantly public funded, and probably the model of what the state broadcaster of a advanced democratic country should look like. Certainly over the bulk of its history. But, people in business generally talk about, culture of organizations. This is a great organization that's, obviously not just large, but spread very thinly. How would you describe the culture, and how, that generosity of spirit and depth of expertise, how does that come about, and what do you think made that place and makes that place so special?
I think I was there at a time when Australia was very in. And I think the fact that I had my cute Aussie accent and that I epitomised, the friendliness of Australians and our happy-go-lucky attitude. And I was willing to try anything, and I was always brought up with very good manners. So I was saying please and thank you a lot. So Australia was very exotic and very much in favour when I was there, those 20 years ago, whatever it was. So I was very lucky. It was definitely being at the right place at the right time. But also, as with all things, it is who you know as well. I had an incredible connection there. My former piano teacher knew the managing director, so I had a direct mobile number to the managing director as well. So as everything in business and in life, it is right place, right time, but it's also the right connection. So, but it was just, I think if you are willing to learn and are willing to start from the ground up, and are willing to, do the filing and get the coffees and whatever else that you need to do, I think it's a good starting point. And then, as you say, the positive experience with it all for me was because I was treated so kindly and learned so many incredible skills. That then is my very first formative positive experience for me to then take through to my career. And even now with the New York Times Magazine, we've got interns, and I try my very hardest to be very kind to them and generous and give them opportunities. And it's very important to have, perhaps if I'd had a terrible experience at the BBC, I wouldn't be where I am. I wouldn't be talking to you. I would be doing something completely. So I think that was extraordinarily lucky and a very formative experience for me to have those people kind of really take me under their wing and get the best training that, money can't buy, really. And I got paid for it.
Yeah, totally. It's so interesting because early in your career, finding people with real expertise that are prepared to share that with you. And yet, as I've gone along, I've realized that, I started work at 18 and I had a very similar experience. However, as I look back now, I was also the person that was prepared to get in at 6:30 every morning, that was known as the person that would, get the bus to any job or catch the train out to the hard stuff, do the crap, the shitty jobs that nobody wanted to do. But that attitude, that sort of, it's described as a can-do attitude, but more a sort of will do the hard things, fetch the coffee, do whatever, does seem to predispose you to opportunities.
I also find in life that if you express a desire to learn and a natural curiosity, I think people respond well to that. And sometimes it takes, I love when I meet someone who's curious, who's asking questions, who wants to know more. I respond to that. I really do. And if I have someone who wants to learn, well, my goodness, that's a good day. So I think it's been like that. I've always been a very curious, interested person. who asks questions and who wants to learn more and who just finds. I've always been a people person, so I've always found maybe that kind of regenerated them a little bit. I mean, it was, at times a pretty staid organization, and there were some things that probably needed a little bit of dusting. So maybe you just kind of need a little bit of a crazy blonde kid from Australia to kind of go, hey, actually, you know what, this is not too bad.
Yeah, so interesting. So you come back to Australia, and what was your next role?
So I finished a master's degree at UTS in journalism, and I majored in business journalism and in investigative journalism, not because it was necessarily a passion of mine, but because those lecturers I had were so phenomenal and like completely iconic. One of my lecturers was a lady called Wendy Bacon, who, went to jail for not wanting to reveal her sources. So again, another formative experience. You really get to the heart of what journalism is and what your public responsibility and duty is as a teller of facts and a teller of society, I guess. So that was my major. And my first, I guess, full-time job was working on 2GB. And my first drive time presenter was Philip Clark. And I did quite well with Philip Clark. And then Alan Jones came from 2UE to 2GB. And so they transferred me from the drive show to the 3 o'clock wake up time, Alan Jones morning show. So I guess that was my first full-time, very low paying job.
And what were you doing? Were you researching stories or preparing information, or what did that job look like? Yeah,
it was a very varied and very long job. It started off with, you would of course suggest talent, but that was mostly done by the executive producer. You would get told which stories he was going to do, and then you would summarize stories from newspapers. You would prepare the research. You would be there during the show to field the calls and do all the on the ground stuff and kind of help him. So it literally did start probably 3 hours before the show, throughout the show, and then another few hours after the show. I also did, and this is probably the thing that I learned most, I did all the correspondence. So Alan Jones receives like crates of Australia Post, crates every day, every morning. The Australia Post truck would come with crates of this stuff. And that was, email was around, obviously, but not as around as it is today. So, the correspondence he must get today with emails would be like 10 times that, because it's just so easy to fire off an email. But I did the crates of mail. So I would look at them every morning. That would come while I was still doing the show, and I was like fielding the calls, and I look at this thing and I'm like, oh my God, this is like my day now. So after the show finished, I would take the crates of correspondence home with me in my little red Daihatsu Charade, and I'd go through the mail. And so the key takeout for me from that was, as much as is humanly possible, answer every single bit of correspondence that comes to you, because that way people will feel like you care and people will feel like you're loyal to them, and that loyalty cannot be bought. So I would answer all the people, and then I'd give him, I print it off, and then he'd just sign it. If the more complicated cases, obviously I'd leave to him, the politicians and all that kind of stuff. Obviously I didn't have the experience or his kind of opinion on things, which is not necessarily a bad thing, obviously. So I would do the stuff that I felt confident to do. The rest of it I would give to him and his PA, but that was daily. It was just, he used to hundreds of letters. Oh gosh, he used to call it a tsunami of correspondence, and that was the funniest turn of phrase I've ever heard, but it was correct. And you just had to answer it. And then sometimes he would send, like I would send a letter and then he would say thank you, and then the person would say thank you. So he'd be sending thank you cards for thank you cards, and it was just insane. It was insane. But like I said, the minute I got my next job, it was like a real conscious effort to try and answer as much correspondence as you possibly could to make people feel like they matter, because they have taken the time to contact you about whatever it is that's important to them. So yeah, that was, I guess, my main lesson from working with Alan Jones. Yeah, it's very, very interesting. One of the early experiences I had, I'd read a guy, he said, you can never send enough thank you cards. Mm-hmm. And I think you touched on it, with your BBC experience, that you'd been actually raised to say please and thank you, which was rare then and rarer now. But to write a thank you card, got one right here, it's about to go out, I've just got to write on it, is quite rare. And it just really
really stuck with me. Now, in a world of email and text messages, I think they have even more impact, actual written correspondence than it had before. And I guess it, it really does build relationship and connection. And I think ultimately that matters a lot.
It does. Even a simple phone call. A girlfriend sent me a bunch of flowers the other day to say congratulations. And I called her. You don't send a text or an email. You call someone or you send them a thank you. You just have to be a little bit more human about it. I mean, what are we,
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. So how many years were you on Alan's show, or were you working there?
Gosh, I was at the 2GB for, maybe 5 years. But I did a range of shows. And Alan, probably 2-3 years.
And then where did you go after that?
I went to magazines. Yeah, I started my magazine journey. So I started working on a brand new magazine that we launched called Limelight, which was the monthly arts and entertainment magazine for the ABC. So that was a big deal. It was a brand new magazine, new masthead, new launch, it was so exciting. And again, a formative experience for me because I have now launched another magazine now. Well, I've launched a few, but I've just launched a magazine a few weeks ago. And
here it is. Let's talk about this magazine.
And you know what the funny thing is, Brett, the same circulation and subscription lady I had for Limelight, I'm using again now because she's phenomenal. So it's a small world, the magazine world. But yes, that was my first big mag job after doing newspapers and radio. And I guess magazines have since then been a constant in my life.
Fantastic. So you launched this magazine and it's obvious that you love magazines. What is it? Where does the passion for magazines come from, and what role do you think they play?
Well, now more than ever, it is escapism. I don't think there's anything wrong with providing readers something which is beautiful stock or beautiful layouts, beautiful copy, something which transports you somewhere, even if it is just for 5 minutes of flicking or an hour of a big read. I think I love magazines that give me engagement and nourishment. I need something which will leave me better off by the time I finish the magazine. So I want to learn something. I want to engage. I want to go through a journey with somebody. And everything about this magazine for me is really important. I keep briefing my writers about this. I need you to talk to your interview subject about their journey of success or failure. In fact, failure to me is equally, if not more interesting, and their resilience, their business journey, their sense of entrepreneurship. It doesn't have to be a business profile, but I think it's really important to see how people succeed in life and how we can learn from them.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So I open your magazine and I have this theory that what resonates with people's DNA is truth, beauty, and goodness. Very old ideas. And when you look at this magazine, you'll see all of that, particularly Bitter and Twisted. That's my favorite. So
delicious.
So I'm not going to tell everybody about it. Go and get a copy. Where do people get this magazine?
Newsagents, which is a bit of a novel idea because I don't think that many people go to newsagents anymore, but I've heard that newsagents have been very excited. Apparently it's the most popular magazine and people have been coming in and reserving copies and setting them aside, which is kind of cool. We're also online at iSubscribe, our own website, taustralia.com.au. We're in bookshops, we're in National Gallery shop, we're in all sorts of interesting retail, but definitely the newsagent's your first point of call, or taustralia.com.au.
So this is very exciting. When I heard about this, I thought, there's a great old saying that, when they zig, you zag, I think Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner, talks about inversion. If everyone's going left, go right, turn it upside down. And I books were going to disappear, but books have never been more popular. People, it's in the DNA of people to love the feel of something, to have a physical connection with an object. And this magazine is absolutely beautiful and full of really rich content. What I think is interesting is that in a shallow, Twitter universe, it is my view that there's a great demand for depth, and those magazines that are still writing, and those newspapers, interestingly, Financial Times being, I think, the best of them out of London with its magazine, its long format. Newspapers, long articles where you're trying to get into some of those universal life experiences, I think really resonate with people. So how often does the magazine come out?
At the moment, it's a quarterly, but we're already going to be increasing towards the end of the year. So the response has been really good. But you're right about the long form thing. Sometimes when I'm briefing writers, I'm like, 3,000, 5,000 words. They're like, what? I get to write that long? It's like, yes, you get to write some words on something fabulous. So yeah.
Yeah, it's great. You know, as you know, I love the Rake magazine, and I love it because it has long articles.
Yes.
So if you're going to get a worthy, you know, interview subject, working out whether you can write 3,000 to 5,000 words on them is one good filter. And they tend to pick up, you know, iconic people who often have had whole books written about them. And if you don't have time to read a whole book, then a good long article is great. So you get the magazine out, and, you know, to your comment, you know, the books that I've written, really my interest has been, you know, I've walked away from the idea of success and said, what I want to understand is who knows how to achieve their goals. You know, when people say to me, Brett, you interview people who are successful, I say, I really try to interview people who've been able to achieve their goals, because ultimately I think in life, achieving your goals is your own personal form of success. You find these people, and you touched on what I think is interesting, the challenges people have had. In your journey, what are the challenges that you see, and how have you really stepped up to those, or navigated them, stepped away from them?
Well, I'll work my way backwards from this particular project, for example. I mean, many people have had COVID babies or are going to have COVID babies, and I guess this is my COVID baby. And this particular project, we've been talking about it for a very, very long time. New York Times approached me a few years ago, and I've always been saying no. I didn't feel the time was right at the time. But last year, there were a couple of challenges that happened. I have a copywriting and a content business on the side. Not on the side, that is actually my job. It feels like it's on the side because at the moment I'm neglecting it because of this magazine, but I've got a copywriting agency, and we lost, I'm going to say, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of business in like 1 week.
Yeah.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars, which many people did. I mean, I'm not the only one, but when you're responsible for people's mortgages and children's educations and everybody else's work, that was really unexpected and very sudden. And there were two things that came out of that. One was I didn't do many magazines. I did some, but I didn't do many. But I also was called upon to do a lot of photo shoots and a lot of styling and a lot of food photography for restaurants that needed to pivot. And I was doing all of that, and I loved it because I was learning new skills, but I missed magazines. And I had to think of something, because the industry around me that I loved was completely crumbling. And I thought, I'm too young to give up this career that I love. Like Harper's Bazaar closed, Elle closed, InStar closed, Women's Health closed. And these are good magazines. Like there were some problems, sure, but they were good magazines. And I thought, my God. And it was just all these people around me were unemployed. All these great talent had nowhere to produce. And I just thought, we need to do something. We need a catalyst. So I enjoyed learning new skills during COVID. I really enjoyed doing that. So I thought, I need my next job to give me new skills to learn, to keep progressing. The second thing was, we need a positive catalyst in the industry to do something. And the third thing, I guess, was I really love magazines. I wouldn't say this is my ultimate goal. I still have other goals I want to achieve, but this is certainly in the top 3 of my life. So we just decided very quickly over the space of literally a couple of weeks with New York Times, signed a contract on like Saturday morning, 2:00, and decided to give it a go. And I have to say that, I mean, the financial challenges are still here because I've decided to fund this myself. I worked really hard over the last 3 to 5 years to work a lot with my other business and save a lot of money. And I did have investors come to me and suggest that we work things together. But at the end of the day, I thought, look, if I can manage this, and if I can say to my kids at the end of the day that Mum did this crazy thing, then I would feel much more satisfied and more proud. I mean, my financial planner thinks I'm either crazy or a genius, but we'll see how we go in about 6 months' time. But so that was one of the challenges that we certainly had, was doing something completely against the grain. And everyone was saying, all these magazines are closing. What are you doing? And I'm like, that's the point. You have to do something different. And I have to say, I do feel like already since we started, there's already been 2 new magazines. It's already had, or 3 actually, it's already had a really positive impact. And one of my chief sub-editors who I poached from Harper's Bazaar, he's so sweet. He said, this job has literally like re-energized my whole career and my whole take on journalism. And I just, you just want to cry when someone says that to you, because it really is, it's impacted so many people. And I feel really proud of that. And I feel really proud to give people work and employ creatives, because everyone's here, photographers, stylists, models, writers, everyone's here because of COVID. And it's just great to have something positive in the industry that then has a positive knock-on effect as well. So that was the challenge. I mean, my other big challenge, I guess, was my dad died when I was quite young. And that was, well, it was extraordinarily difficult at the time because of the grief and just the tragedy of it all. But also, obviously, we had to look after mum and the financials, and I was still at uni and my brother was at uni and he was studying medicine. So that, was not a cheap degree. So that was a personal challenge. But as with anything, that obviously makes you just grow up quicker, maybe better. I don't know. I think it certainly made me a more compassionate and empathetic person, and a lot more aware. I think as a teenager, because I was quite good at piano, I was possibly, I'm a bit embarrassed to say it now, but I was probably a little bit up myself. And I'm embarrassed about it now, obviously. But sometimes you just like, that was such a shock losing dad. That was such a massive slap in the face that you kind of realize that actually you're not the center of the universe. You really are not. And it really puts you in your place. So that was a formative experience in my personal life. And then I guess when you lose someone like that, dad was brilliant. And then I would have just loved to have him here to see me, what I'm doing, and for him to be proud. But I'm one of those weird spiritual people that believes, people are still around us. So hopefully he knows. But yeah, so that was a personal challenge. And apart from that, I mean, you know what, is it a cliche to say challenge is an opportunity? I don't know. I think I've enjoyed having obstacles chucked at me and learning things and being thrown in the deep end and trying to make my way around it. I'm very lucky. I'm born with a very positive attitude and a very self-deprecating nature. So I'm quite happy to tackle whatever gets thrown at me. I've had horrible bosses, horrible workplaces, fabulous bosses, fabulous workplaces. You just do the best you can at any given time. And now when I'm kind of in control of the magazine and the creative direction of it, I'm using all those lessons.
All those experiences. Yeah, it's very interesting. It's really interesting. So one of the exercises I've done with people, do it all the time is, I encourage people to write a shit list. And that's a list of all the shit things that have happened in a given scenario. So if you're starting a magazine, you get your team together and instead of doing a SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threat, it's just much more fun to make a shit list. And then you say,
that.
Okay, I worked at the magazine and, I look in here and I see all the roles. And so what I'd do with your team is I'd say, hey guys, when you worked for an editor-in-chief, what were the shit things they did? What did the creative and style director, what were the shit things they did? And when we started our firm, it was really just about, we said, well, look, if we just didn't do any of those shit things, then we'd really be quite different, because the industry just has this habit of doing all this shit that just doesn't make any sense. And that seemed to really resonate with people that, if you say to somebody, how do you do something? Great mystery. How do you stay married 50 years in a great, functional and awesome relationship? Well, that's one of the great mysteries of the world, but it's not a great mystery as to how to blow up a relationship. So in a business, if you go through and say, okay, in a magazine, what are all the shit things we've seen? The worst boss, the worst this, the worst that, the worst, how do we just not be that? That makes it so different. And then the other thing, listening to you, that, and knowing you, I was with a young person yesterday trying to work out how to get from where they are to where they want to be, which I think is one of life's great challenges. That thing I refer to about how to achieve your goals. I'm intrigued. Talk to me about how many hours you work in a week, because every time I'm working with a young person or any person trying to help them work out how to get from where they are to where they want to be, a lot of work hours seems to be part of that. And potentially culturally, people have convinced themselves that, you can achieve your goals in life working 8 hours a day or 7 hours a day.
I don't even understand what the number 7 means. Like mine's like 17.
Like what is the work? Yeah. Like getting behind, so often people, when this magazine is a crazy success, as I'm sure it will be, everyone will say, gee, KK, you're so lucky. So how much work do you think it takes to, how much work have you put in to get this business up and running?
Well, first of all, I've put in 20 years.
You start with 20 years experience.
So I mean, this morning I was up at 5:30 because my children decided that's a suitable time to get up. I don't agree with that, but that's okay. I'll roll with it. So I get up quite early. My husband also owns restaurants. And so I have become what we like to term is a hospo widow. So I'm certainly not a widow, thank goodness. But because he works very late in the restaurants, I tend to have most of my evenings free to work. And I've always done that ever since I've been with him. So it's kind of naturally lent itself to me being able to work long hours. And I don't mind. I mean, I don't binge TV. What am I going to do? I might as well be productive. So,
and you've got a couple of kids?
I do. I've got a 3 and a 4-year-old, 2 boys.
Yeah. So you've got the kids.
Yes.
You've got the hospitality owning husband.
Yeah.
So you get up around 5:30. Kids go to bed, hopefully at some point. Sometimes sometimes they stay in bed, as we all know. But you have the evening to work. You work during the day. So you're kicking out, 12 or 14 hours a day?
I do. Oh, gosh, yeah. And I also, ever since my children were born, I have picked them up, dropped them off at school or preschool or kindy or whatever, and I'll pick them up every single day myself. Do not have a nanny, do not have a helper. And I'm not saying that to play victim or hero, but I just think it's really, really important to have that connection with them. So yes, I will work from super early. I finish work about 3. I go grab them. We have a good 3-4 hours in the afternoon together. We'll do soccer, we'll do parks, we'll go to the beach, do dinner, bath, all the usual stuff. And then absolutely, when they finally, hallelujah, go to bed, then I put in a good sort of 4 hours after, and I go to bed around 11 or 12. The only challenge with that, and I've had to chat to everyone about this, is I feel really anxious, causing my staff anxiety. I say to them, I will send you emails at crazy hours. I don't have to do that if you don't want me to. But it's really easy for me just to get through my admin and to get through my inbox. No pressure to answer whatsoever, deal with it in the morning. And we have had to have that chat with a few people because I know they're like freak out when they get an email from me at like 10:30 and then they feel like they have to answer back, and they absolutely don't have to. So I'm very transparent and very clear with what my life structure is and the fact that I do work late almost every night. And I do apologize for that. And I have tried like Boomerang and like delayed schedule sending and all that kind of stuff, but I just find it really confusing and messy. So now I just send and apologise. But yes, I do.
But you can treat your mailbox, like I have said to people, you can treat your in-mailbox like a mailbox. You choose what time you go out the front in the morning and pick up your mail.
Totally.
So you can be quite disciplined around how you handle that.
Yes, I know, but obviously when you have an email from the editor, people think there's something wrong. So they freak out, which there's no need to. But no, I think we've got a good rhythm now. I think people understand my hours and my hours of working and my hours are not working. So most people are pretty understanding and respectful of that. But yeah, I would say 14 at least, if not 16 hours a day.
Yeah, so it's a great one. Like for people listening, I often have people say to me, it'd be really great to have my own business, to build something, to start something. But there's a massive human cost. There's an enormous commitment required. And as much as every working parent with a business says that, well, I'll pick the kids up and I'll drop the kids off and I'll do those things, you do bring a kineticness to that situation that you wouldn't have if you were not doing other things. Now, I've never thought that was a bad thing. Beck and I always said to Beck, your kids learn from what they see, and if they learn that it takes a lot of effort to achieve your goals, then that's probably not a bad thing to learn. But it is, I think the effort is real.
Oh, there's an enormous amount of sacrifice. Nobody sees me doing the budgets and doing the Excel spreadsheets, which I know you love, but for me it's absolute hell. No one sees that. No one sees me trying to pay mortgage and rent and trying to figure out where the kids are going to go to school and all this stuff. And no one sees not loneliness, but there is a certain amount of, people get paid. I might not get paid. No one really cares. And that's okay, because that's a risk I've decided to take. And I'm taking it very happily because it's an amazing opportunity. The other day I had breakfast with a girlfriend and she goes, oh my God, how have you just done this? And I'm like, you know what? I'm lucky. I am lucky. I'm very lucky to have a job I love. And yes, I've created that job and I've been offered that job by an amazing global icon of journalism. And it's extraordinary. I still can't believe that that's happened, Brett. I did not speak English when I came to Australia. I did not know a word. And now New York Times said, hey, you want to launch this mag? And I'm like, honestly, the first time I put my name and New York Times in the same sentence, I nearly fell off the chair. I cannot believe this has happened. It's extraordinary. So yeah, there's moments of complete isolation and frustration and God knows what else that comes with this, because also I'm being kind to myself. I've been doing this for a few months. This is a brand new company, which is now other company. The first year is going to be, as you say, crap. It's going to be bloody tough, and the second year is going to be better. And I just have to suck it up and move on with it, and just work.
Yeah, it's so true.
And all that stuff, and that's it. You can't sit back and wallow in your misery. You just got to get up and do it.
Yeah, it's great. So for the people listening, I wanted to get KK on just so that you could really feel her vibe, if you like, in that, her get up and go to make things happen and keep going. I really believe that's so much of what any of us are trying to do. While the world has challenges, and today we tend to be inundated with them through every platform under the sun, it is still possible, with enough hard work. And yes, it might be the case that some people have more advantage than others and all the rest of it. I'm sure that has always been the case and always will be the case. And we should all do what we can to make it as good as it can be. But I just keep meeting people who are making things happen, and I find that really energizing and exciting. So from here, your hope is that this ultimately becomes a monthly magazine, or it gets included. Is it something that you expect should be stocked across supermarkets and news agents and be a monthly? Is that the ultimate vision?
I would say, well, we're already in about 3,000 news agents around the country, which is pretty good. And I am stalking each one of those to make sure they're selling. I am also in chats with supermarkets, yes, and I hope to have that by the end of the year. I am looking for it to be bi-monthly very soon. And then even in the US, it's not quite monthly. I'm not sure that the advertising market is there for a monthly in Australia, but definitely increasing the frequency. But also, Brett, I think there's a real thirst in Australia for some quality events. So we're looking at the event space at the moment in terms of very small, very considered, very carefully curated events discussing it's like cultural debate, but very open, no holds barred, and I will be moderating them, and we'd get sponsorship and all that kind of stuff. But we've already got those planned probably until about September this year. So I think the event space is something that I'm really keen to embrace, because there's not really that many people doing it or doing it well. So the luxury plus lifestyle plus business plus success plus entrepreneurs plus culture all kind of wrapped up into one. That's actually currently our next project. So the magazine is definitely the backbone of everything we do, and that's where our integrity and our authenticity comes from. But the brand itself has got so much loyalty here in Australia, and I think there's a huge amount of scope for us to make it into a wider brand than just a magazine. So we're thinking big.
Yeah, it's awesome. So here we are for everyone who's tuned in to this episode. You've got somebody of I think huge talent and ability, massive work ethic, partnering with a global icon to bring something to Australia that I think is really unique and different, and has a real credible chance at over the long term making a real impact in Australia. Kate, I really want to thank you for joining us today. I always enjoy the opportunity to catch up, and when we're looking for podcast guests, who would we bring to our audience? I was like, yeah, let's get KK on there, because I don't doubt that everyone will benefit from the time that you've spent with us today. So as I like to say, have a great day.
Thank you so much, Brett. So yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thanks for listening to the Be Better Off Show. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to rate and review on Apple Podcasts.
Have a great day.